New. How about if I do this? If I make you the host, does that change things? Share, and I'll share the screen again. Just want to welcome everybody to this evening's webinar with the Sport Coaching Leadership here at Drexel University. I want to welcome Tim McLaren, a good friend of mine and a good friend of the program. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of coaching this evening, and before I get rolling here, Tim has been a great advocate, I think, of linking research to practice, and I think that's the one thing that I think we'll see tonight in this conversation, of looking at the fundamentals of coaching. I've got a couple of prompts here from the research that I think Tim's vast experience at coaching at all levels will be able to just enlighten us a little bit with our own practices. I think that's the one thing, Tim, you speak to, self-awareness and the importance of that as a building block of coaching. But as I'll flick over here to a couple of the questions that we talked about, Tim, in terms of this presentation, and just want to welcome you and say thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Cam. Nice to see you again.
Absolutely. So, just in terms of this conversation, Tim, we wanted to talk about the fundamentals and specifically what are some of the things that you find are the essential requirements of great coaches?
Well, it's a good question to ask, and I think for your students, it's on display every time. If you watch sport and you're into coaching, you should be getting a little feedback on. There's consistent modeling, right? Whether you're watching Bill Belichick or you're Coach K that coaches Duke, or any of the famous coaches in America historically, and from Bobby Knight, the fairly emotional basketball coach historically. There's always some good examples of different styles. Mike Leach, the Pirate, who used to coach at Texas Tech, who got fired. Some of these guys certainly are a force of nature. So things that we can take out of it as students of coaching and people that want to improve and forge a career in coaching, I think it's useful to absorb all those things and see, well, what really fits my style of coaching.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned those pretty iconic figures, and there's plenty of others that are splashed around in the media. Do you think, advice for coaches that see that, what's underpinning all that? Do you think what do you think? Is it more the spin of the media? Do you think it's a little bit of both, that's the way those coaches are, or what's your sense that the influence that has on the general population of coaches?
I think it's all of those things, Cam. It is media influence. It's the hype of the game. And I think as coaches, young coaches, I don't know the age of the audience, but I assume you're youngish sort of guys and girls. I think there are good role models everywhere in coaching. And you may have a passion for teaching and for, the art of the game. But when it really comes down to it, the stuff that we see on the media, it's a very, very competitive environment. People get fired all the time. There's high drama around coaches generally in these high-profile sports. So, we have to take all that into account, that it is the cut and thrust of competition. Now, you may be cutting your teeth on coaching the under-9s or a school team, a local town team. You may be an assistant or a bit of a manager / coach. I think these are all good positions to introduce yourself into the realities of, I've got 20 kids who are 10 years old here I've got to organise, or 30 kids. I've got so many balls, sometimes I lack equipment. There's no witches' hats to run around and form any drills. So resources is a reality of coaching as well. So, and that brings you back to the question, being prepared. So you're always there an hour or more earlier setting up the practice. It's good to have a plan, particularly when you're starting off. I don't know how many of you are former players and athletes at any level. Even if you weren't the best player on the team, you might have played all through high school, you might have played through college. In rowing, you could have been in the third crew. But, you had that experience of working with the top guys and the top coaches, and you're an observer. And I think as a coach, you need to be, above all else, an observer of yourself, but, when you're learning the coaching game, certainly of others and, role models of yours, things you admire in coaching.
Yeah, I think that brings out one of the things that many of the students to the program that sort of get hooked on. And it's a question for you: are coaches born to want to be better, or is that something that you figure out along the way? You run into a brick wall, or you have a bad loss, and you think, okay, I've got to rethink this. What's your thought on are coaches born to learn, or is that something you figure out along the way?
No, I think it's a good point. Absolutely. I mean, there's more research on it these days than historical, but the nature of it is, if you're again coming back to the competitive side of it, and that's what it is. You're coaching a team to try and win the game. Now, sometimes, and as you go through coaching, you'll find that if I've got better players, I sort of look better as a coach as well. So that's a key understanding there, and assessing that at the start of the season and saying, well, what sort of season are we going to have here? Do I need to try and recruit a few more? Am I going to make it more fun, get a lot of creative drills around? I'm going to teach more skills. I'm going to hold a few more barbecues after training on a Saturday. So I think there is always that learning, side of coaching. I think it's only natural to want to improve. Oh, I saw the Patriots do this drill and I'm going to do that. Or I saw, some of the basketball drills or the soccer drills, or, I watched some of the swimming and I got a copy of a program. There's stuff available now, which wasn't in the past. Mm. But so I think it's just normal as you move along. You learn, I made that mistake. I've got to improve. I'll cut out that. Geez, training was terrible. Oh, my kids were out of control. So I think it goes without saying that coaching is learning on the job. And there's sometimes hard lessons. It's a bit of a blow to your ego at times. And once you start getting yourself, the students start getting videoed and critiqued by their peers, of course, just in the classroom, you can have a little fun with that. But you've also got to have some self-awareness and self-management. And Cam and I have done a little work on that with some disc profiling in the past, Cam. So, but there's nothing like seeing yourself and hearing yourself. I was on a rowing webinar with Olympic gold medal coach, a friend of mine, last week, and I couldn't see myself so it was quite small. It was my first, extensive webinar, you might say. And my wife said, "Did you see yourself on the webinar?" And I said, well, no, I really couldn't get a lot of feedback from how I was doing. She said, "Well, you answered the question, but you just kept going on and on." and you sort of just rambled. And I said, "Well, that's rowing a little bit. If you know a lot, you tend to talk a lot, So, but nonetheless, it's a wake up. If you have wives and daughters, as one day you'll see there's plenty of critics around. But seriously, I mean, you have to understand that visual part of coaching. How do I present? And that's a big part of learning. And I think that is a cornerstone for you guys. What sort of a coach am I? You might be an absolute genius at statistics and plays and patterns and all those sorts of things. In other words, an absolutely critical, vital part of the group. But the delivery is going to be key. And how am I getting the message across? What's my tone like? Was I energetic and enthusiastic? Was I too shy? My nervousness really came across? So I think, you know, the learning is no question, Cam. It's just it's just so all encompassing in so many areas.
Yep. Yep. I'm curious as to your opinion on this one. This is a model. I hope everyone can see that's come out of some of the research in Europe in the early 2000s. But it's basically splits up what we do as coaches into the what you coach, the who you are or who are you coaching, and then how are you actually doing the coaching. And I'm curious your reaction to models. I know is it's sometimes hard to put a complex activity like coaching into boxes like this. But what's your reaction to those three categories? Do you have a preference to what's more important, and how would you use something like this in assessing your own coaching practices?
You know, I think research, your students will see there's sometimes it seems like they're trying to make the simple more complicated. But I think if you could, maybe the model is not presented super well, and the circles and the arrows, and there's a few diversions there. But if we just put it in a bit of a list, I think that makes it simpler. I think just that follows on from what we were just saying, understanding of yourself, some of your beliefs and values and behaviors. Those things are much more in the, you know, there are more business seminars and leadership books and, you know, culture, grit and resilience. And there's a lot of buzzwords around. That all stops, of course, as soon as you're in front of your audience. So understanding yourself and some of the things that you worry about as a coach. You love coaching, but you can see that I need to practice a few things. And the mirror is great for that. Do I look confident? Do I sound confident? So there's delivery, but it mentions, I think, a good point, the beliefs, your values, behaviors. I'm sure your audience, the students here today, I'm sure all of you come from a range of backgrounds. And, you know, I think it is, once you're in coaching, you have to, you know, sort of try and change what you can. And okay, you don't have to have gone to any famous university, and you don't have to be any star athlete. Kids detect, when the psychosocial and stuff, you can talk about that self-determination theory. We're getting into some sort of behaviors and just innate human needs, if you like, expectations. Everyone wants to belong somewhere. That's the great thing about going to Drexel or being in basketball or a soccer team, or people want to belong somewhere. And they like structure within that sporting environment. They're used to it since they were very young. Hey, there's so many players on the team. There's a time, there are rules, and you and your training will have similar sorts of standards. So, you know, how much you impose those things on your team and how much a group agreed on, well, that's, you know, depending on that audience. But I think the top line, it's around the circle, so it probably doesn't do it quite justice. It should be just straight and understanding of self and personal beliefs, values and behaviors. A great, you know, life comment, if you like. Yeah. Determines your occupations and where you like to work and who you like to work with, and what sort of things are you prepared to put up with.
Yeah, I think with a lot of the feedback we get from some of our younger coaches is, you know, they focus very much on the what are you coaching, you know, the technical and the tactical. And I think it's a good segue to this next slide of some of the research of some of the best coaches that Cliff Mallet and Sergio Lara Bercial have done, looking at across the globe of multiple Olympic winning coaches, and they categorize three major areas: vision, the people that you select, and also the environment. What's your reaction to again, you know, sort of compartmentalizing and saying, well, there are only three major areas there, because obviously you have to prioritize, obviously you have to to put the pieces of the puzzle up on the table. But is there anything there that you think, hey, it's not that there's something missing, or something that in your experience you'd either emphasize or add to this list?
As you know, one of my favorite sayings is from the father of modern psychology, Hans Selye, Selye. And for guys in the audience and girls in the audience, you might read back and you'll find that this guy invented the word stress back in the 1930s. Coaching and sport can be stressful. We put a stress physically and we feel good after a workout. So there's that side of it. One of his sayings that I have on the wall in various places I go is, there's no learning without uncertainty. There's no learning without uncertainty. And, sport is uncertain. Is the coach going to drop me? He really ripped into me. So athletes worry about what the coach thinks and says. We're on about coaching, but you've also got to have a little bit of awareness of what's the group here? What is the kid's background? So some of the kids struggle in other areas of life. One parent perhaps, or a big family, or some sort of dysfunctional background. Not that you can solve every problem, but certainly your awareness helps how you deal and nurture some of the young ones, if you're coaching young people, I'm saying. But across the board, I think a good level of care and attention to the athlete welfare, firstly, teach skills, secondly, and then, work on things that are going to help you win a game or two and develop the team from there. What do great coaches do? I think a good vision for sure, and the ability to see into the future. Where would you like to end up, of course. I think capacity to simplify the complex is key. If I had to say, that was one thing I try and do over the years. You could comment better how successful I've been, Cam, but sometimes thorough action planning goes so far. You've got all the do. You've got the practice plan. That's one side of it. But often you're freeing your mind so that you can use your intuition and your judgment and be on automatic. Overthinking really inhibits the intuitive and the natural part of coaching. When you're relaxed and you're shooting the breeze, or you're shooting out comments, and you up the pace of everything. You're shouting, you're talking fast, you're clapping your hands, that's because we've got physical with trying to also process information, and those sorts of things under pressure. You can't always do that. You're on automatic. That's why we practice. That's why we train. So I think there are some physiological and psychological constructs that we learn as we're going through the theories of coaching, and I think they some good themes can be remembered rather than have to remember it as in a PhD sort of way. The people in reviewing and adjusting, you're doing automatic. You're adjusting the practice. This is not really working as well as I'd hoped, but I have a few other things up my sleeve. So I've got Plan B, Plan C. I know the difficult people that are in the team. Maybe I'll have to pull them aside as we're walking off the paddock. Hey, you got a minute? And when kids have exercised in that, there's a bit more receptive. There's burnt off a bit of emotional angst. Some of the people you coach are going to be difficult. But after practice, where they've run around and they've had drills, and not saying that they weren't difficult to practice, but you might just call them over, and as you're walking off, you can have a one-on-one. Hey, look, we're all trying to do the same thing here. I'm happy to hear things that I could improve, but you have a good influence on the team. And to put some of those difficult people in more leadership positions can sometimes be a good strategy, for example. So you have to sense that these are things where every plan doesn't go to plan. You know, and you might be on your mind, I have to talk to that kid, but you know, you're a bit nervous or you're a bit reluctant to, or the kid's so difficult that you think this is not going to be pleasant. And maybe you're not good at confrontation. So they're all the self-awareness things we talk about in coaching. You can say, hey, look, I'm the boss here, and you can go that way, but with the difficult ones, it's much better to, try and draw them into the fold as best you can. At least try some strategies, or get people of influence that work well with them. But they're all strategies that sort of you have to, feel your way through a little bit, and that's the second heading there. The people, you want energetic people, you want enthusiastic people. You don't have to be great. Depending on the level you're coaching, you will go a long way when the people see you care and you're organized. It doesn't strike the kid as like, it's like kids growing up in a family. Oh, my mum, little kids don't think all the time, my parents are the best, and I'll do the dishes because they cook this nice meal for me. They're out the door. Yeah. They had the meal and they're gone. But as soon as you're away, or if you ever lose a kid, you've got young children and you're in a toy shop or the grocery store, and the kid gets distracted and he's so absorbed you've moved to the next row or two, and he looks around and you're gone. Well, all hell breaks loose. They call that abandonment. So people don't respond well to being deserted in all forms that we know of. So I think the people is important, getting a good little team, getting someone as enthusiastic as you. There's a lot of, I look now and there's lots of roles for high performance managers and high performance directors. And we even have a term here at an institute of sport called a manager of personal excellence.
What is that?
Well, now you've got to understand, you want to be a great, good coach because of all those things that we just taught, your values, your enthusiasm. It's not because of the name, your title. So everyone's called high performance. I'm going, well, it's only sport. I don't see any high performance managers at Google or at Warren Buffett's organization or Bill Gates's. There's no high performance manager, just a manager. I just assume he's interested in being pretty good. Do I have to call myself that? Because in about 5 minutes, these guys say, man, this guy's lazy. He's disorganized. So calling yourself whatever, it's not going to promote your ability. You've got about 30 seconds to capture the audience. So, believing in the athletes, the coaches, the team organization, managing the high performance entourage. Well, we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there.
What about environment?
Keep it tight. Keep it lean.
What about your environment? What about culture? What about that aspect of it? The greater context.
Yeah, look, I think the great coaches that I've seen and worked with over the years, they never mention the word. In the past, just for the younger members of the audience, in the past, people like Cam and I might go into Olympic coaches or Olympic athletes would go into businesses and talk about their experience. And people would listen to the fact that I got up at 4 o'clock and in the morning, and we trained hard 2 or 3 times a day, and we traveled and we did this and that. So it's a all-encompassing sort of world, and people in business are going, wow, that's impressive. And you did this year after year. Then I had a part-time job of a night time, and so that even though you're in sport, there's a little bit of hardship and toughness in that. So in the high performance range, somehow in the last, I guess 10 or 15 years maybe, business principles and business seminars and business jargon has sort of morphed its way into the coaching and sporting world. Organisation that runs the country in rowing had a culture survey a few years ago. They didn't think it was very good, You know, they thought, no, it's not quite right. They had a survey. The survey, I'd guess it was a six figures. And it told them what they already knew, that it wasn't great, that there wasn't a high level of trust or, you know, clear goals, what they should do, not a lot of feedback, etc., etc. These are normal things. I'm not being critical of that organisation, but and this happens in a lot of places. But there are recommendations made, and then people go back to work, and nothing really changes too much. But you've got to remember, in a business, you're paying people to do the job. In some of the research in that psychology area, some of the researchers suggest that up to 70% of people are disengaged at work. So, you know, when you look at a statistic like that, you say, okay, it's hard sometimes to get the culture, but you know, so people go through processes to justify, yeah, well, I did a culture survey, but really it's, the buck stops with you. That's the great thing about coaching. People that come and want to play footy or soccer or basketball, whatever sport, ice hockey, they're engaged, you know, and most of them want to be there. And those that don't, that have a little talent, well, you know, you have to draw them in, give them roles, responsibility, have them teaching a few little drills that they're good at, perhaps. So, you know, the high performance thing is, you know, the only place it counts is on the paddock. You know, as long as you've got people you trust. And look, I know a lot of, you know, mothers and women in particular. I mean, they're guns, you know, they run households, they have full-time jobs, they're mothers, they're on committees, and they're not waiting to say, hey, look, I did the washing up. I'm waiting for the thank you and the, you know, 5-star rating. They just do stuff, and they're moving on, and they're moving, and they're moving. They haven't got time to wait for praise or anything else. So for me, they're a great example of a quiet leadership. I mean, they may not want to run the company, but they're so impressive in their work ethic and their busyness, and they're getting the job done, you know. And so I come back to enthusiasm and you know, sort of a lot of pizzazz with your training, you know, that you're really enjoying it, and giving feedback. Kids today want feedback, you know. You can't stand there with your arms folded like Bill Belichick and not say too much, you know. It's a different audience, and it's a different level. So, you know, I think I think some of those things are common sense. I think for you people as students, I think try and distill some of this theory that looks a little complicated, like that drawing up. You might write your own little chart, which says similar stuff, but you see it a little better. You know, you see just like you see a play. You know, a play on the court, on the soccer field. You see how a play runs, and that's a bit complex for us, but we could do a version. We could do the first or the second half of that drill. You know, so yeah. No, they're all
speak to engagement as a critical aspect of that, and I think you know, that's definitely one of the qualities that I've seen you as a coach, and I think it's a good segue to this next slide that breaks down the qualities of some of these coaches that Cliff and some of the researchers looked at. You know, the trait-based work has all kinds of criticism in the research. Is it scholarly? Is it really reliable? Is it valid? But as it relates to sort of engagement and I think another aspect of a quality that I've seen in you as a coach is also how you've relied on intuition. Can you speak a little bit about that, just in terms of, you know, we were talking before everyone jumped on, just in terms of these first couple, you know, how many some of the best coaches are really emotionally stable? Maybe not so much, you know, the Bobby Knights of this world, you know, maybe not stability is at the top of their list, but do you want to just talk to a little bit about that aspect? Because I know you've got a lot of perspective in that area.
Well, you know, when you're studying psychology for our audience today, you'll come up against a straight trait and state emotional. So traits imply that, you know, that's a character trait of yours that can't be really changed. I think that's debatable. I can understand where there's a fair bit of discussion around that. But again, coming back to reality, you can put your personal, this is students, you can put your personal traits, good and bad, over to the side, because on the practice with the kids, if you are coaching anyone under 18, you know, they want to see you and you can adapt. So, you know, I'm a fan of sort of, you know, situational traits, things that you can play out, you can practice, but, you know, you've got a good idea what is needed here, what's needed. And it's enthusiasm and it's organization. And so it's a mix of things that are common sense to you. I'm going to run these drills. Well, I will have to get there an hour early to put all the hats out, and I'll mark out grids, and I just can't do that 5 minutes beforehand. That's really stressful. So, you know, you may have a trait of being, you know, always late or a little bit, you know, disorganized, or, you know, and people sum you up. You only have to do things once or twice and people make a psychological assessment of you. So, you know, I think an awareness, this is just a spin-off of that self-awareness a little bit. I think all coaches are open to new learning. Sort of implies, you know, that you're a student always, and I'm always interested in what's going on. Again, you're always looking for an advantage. There's so much information out there now that, you know, it's it's hard to find an edge, if you like. Everyone's got access to a lot of information. Yeah, traits. I like the state emotion. So what do you bring on the day, on the practice field, outside of the practice field? Maybe it's young people, you have to talk to parents. Maybe you have to get all the parents together and say, look, this is not going to work if we, you know, and you'll have to lecture the parents on sporting behavior for parents. Now, there's a bit of information on that around as well. So, you know, they can't be coaching their kid from the sideline. They've just got to let things unfold. That's where you've got parental interference all the time. It stops. The kids don't deal with disappointment, with failure, with, you know, missing a tackle that results in the winning try. You have to put your arm around the kids, say, hey, you know, it's good effort. You know, we're going to do some practice this week. And so kids move on, buy them an ice cream, and okay. So keep it in perspective, try to give all kids a game. There are just principles like that which you have to, you know, you have to address. Do I have a policy on that? I better tell all the parents about that. That could be a surprise when their kid, you know, if they're winning a game-winning situation, you have to bring on the 5 worst players. That sometimes doesn't, it doesn't really, you know, some parents are there, they're being good players themselves perhaps, or not. But anyway, I think those trait things, I think what makes sense to you, for me, it's just delivering what you can on the day. Things that you know you have to work on, they can be changed. I'm going to get up, I'm going to be extra early. So these people won't know about my past life. They'll just say, he's always there early, he's always there late. You can, you know, you can adjust to the situation and what image you want to project. What reputation do I want to establish? What do I want to be known as? I think they're important questions. You know, we're getting down into the psychology here, but really we're trying to be as functional as we can and thinking on your feet. And, you know, you've got to assess the practices that's going on. You can be motivated and you can have a good ability to influence others, but practice may not be going quite as planned, and you have to shake it up a little bit. Okay, you might put a fun game on or something in the middle, but you need to have those little plan Bs and Cs there. as you go along. Identity, redeem failures as an athlete, uniqueness, learning, and genuine design to help others.
What's your thought on that one? That one jumps out at me, just the motivation to redeem failure as an athlete. What's your thought as to why many of us get into coaching?
Yeah, I think that's really a bridge too far for mine.
Yeah.
You know, I think how it really works, I was a student like the students here today, and even when I was only 20, my coach, I was rowing in the surf, and my coach said to me, "Hey, my son is in the under nines, and you're going to be a teacher. How about you come down and help out?" Oh my God, you know. But of course, he's your coach, and some of these coach, he was a little bit, you know, he had a bit of an edge to him. I certainly wasn't going to say no. So I turn up to coach these under nines. I've got one football. You know, I've got one football. The kids are running around everywhere. I'm yelling. I'm trying to create some order, or I had no drills, you know, back and forth passing. Let's play a little game. Just do a few sprints. It's stuff that you did. And so that's how you get into it. Okay, then the next year, okay, then you find yourself teaching. Okay, you got to coach the school teams. It's fun if you like teaching. But you see, you're still in a position of authority. You're at a school where you're a teacher, you have some level of respect, so you have a little bit of leverage. Kids are not going to mess up too much so practicing and coaching at a school is a good starting point. You've got some parameters there and some support in terms of a discipline sort of thing. If you're coaching the local team there, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles, a soccer team or something, and a collection of kids from around Philly, well, that could be anything. You know, you'll have your kids from a family of 6 or 8 or 10 kids, and someone else who's moved into the area from somewhere else, and it'll be a mixture. So, yeah, I think, I don't know about redeeming failure as an athlete. I think some get into coaching accidentally. Some of you here in the audience, I'd be interested in hearing. It's probably a good question to ask. You know, some of the students. You know, how do they see that? I'm not sure that everyone is an athlete to redeem failure from. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I'm sure there's some cases of that, but to put it up as a you know, as a fait accompli, I think, well, I think the learning and I think the desire to help others is good, and that's how I got in. Okay, I helped my coach. Maybe my motivation wasn't as it should, pure as it should have been. Just a fear of getting getting yelled at or something is probably enough. But I think the first two, the traits, they're sort of rolled into one. That I wouldn't say that's unequivocally deserves to have a name on its own there.
In terms of a broader conversation of influence, we've spoken quite a lot about this idea of presence, and it's interesting that there hasn't been a lot written about presence in the sport coaching research, and this is an interesting definition that I uncovered from some of the nursing literature. That basically says, the ABC, appearance, behavior, and communication, plus being genuine and intentional, equals presence. What's your thought on that one? How do you see presence fitting into the role of coaches, and if so, why is it important?
Well, this could well be your most important slide. Just for the students there that are listening, I'll give you a little background. Cam was studying for his PhD. He has a string of degrees and is wonderfully educated. And I was the head coach. We were working with the Olympic team at the time. And Cam had been researching and studying successful coaching, just as your students are. And he came in one day and I asked him over lunch, I said, "Hey, how's that research going?" He said, "I've actually finished." And I said, "Oh, great." I said, "What did you find?" He said, "Well, no. What about you tell me what you think is the number one thing?" And I said, "Well, one thing." So we've been through 50 things this morning already. I said, well, it's not really one thing. No, he said, just one thing. You only get one choice. What's top of the list? No. Well, could be knowledge, enthusiasm, ability to think on your feet. There's so many things. No, one choice. Okay, I'll cheat a little. What about presence? So, great coaches, whether it's Belichick or others, they have great presence. In other words, it's a sum of who they are, what they do. It's sort of the intangibles almost. They put all this theory into themselves, and they seem to be able to deliver what's needed. I said, where is that on your list? He said, it's not on the list. Right. Okay. So there's no research. No. Okay. So we pulled out a pad. We had the crew list there. And so I said, well, let's make up the coaching presence scale. So Cam is responsible. So he's always been interested in this. And he and I have a lot of discussions about it because there isn't a lot of research, because it's sort of hard to measure and hard to put into a little table. But that was how we started off with the coaching presence scale. And what does that scale exist of? Well, this is the start of it.
That's the beginning of it. Yeah, because we've looked at and tried to examine what's out there, and there are a few sort of businessy related books out there, and I think that sort of fits back to what you were mentioning earlier, Tim, just in terms of how some of the jargon and vernacular of the business world is sort of creeping into sport. And here's to the best of my knowledge, sort of the most prevalent examples of what's out there. Amy Cuddy there on the bottom is pretty well known for a TED talk that she does on presence, and probably leans towards more the conversation of body language, where the text there in the middle by Halpin and Luber are talking more about some of these examples of assessing presence as it relates in the business environment, and that one text breaks it down and says, hey, look, this is one example of what presence is. It's being present, it's having self-knowledge, it's reaching out to others, and there's a level of expression in there. And I think, Tim, you've touched on each of those areas, but what's your thought on that if you put it into the context of your years in coaching? Does that sum it up, or do you think there's something more to presence than breaking it down to these four areas?
Well, I think from coaching, I think the art as it is in coaching is to distill the information and deliver the product. And we have to distill we've talked about this all morning already. And I think if you simplify things, if I'm coaching, okay, I turn up, therefore I'm present, like people can see me. Now, am I dressed okay? Am I pretty keen? Am I a bit animated? Am I jogging around? Am I, giving, just engaging some of the kids with a few light comments and hey, did you see the game on the weekend? It's just about engaging kids, particularly kids who are quite happy not engaging. And so you're trying to draw, there's a good book by Susan Cain called Quiet. And she just talks about how there's a lot of introverts in the world. And she talks about introverts and extroverts and, just what they bring and what sort of behaviors. The DISC profile on the Athlete Assessments website, that also, talks about engineering student and maths and accounting and finance numbers type of preferences compared to people who are, they like to read and they like to, create and other preference. So we have a range. So we're educating ourselves a little bit, and then we're looking at kids and we're trying to sort of figure a little more about them to help them improve. You're not just teaching sport, you're teaching them about fitting in with the group, about a little behavior, coming out of themselves, asking a few questions, engaging. So, I think this is one of the enjoyable parts of coaching. I've had kids, a good group of kids at my rowing club for the last few years, but they came in as sort of nerdy, school leavers who kept to themselves but the group has gradually brought them in. And you have to be all the time darting around the group, giving everyone a little bit of attention. That can be a sense of humor or a joke, not too nasty, not too sarcastic, not too cutting. It's a sensitive environment these days. Engaging kids and giving kids attention, extra practice for drills, but not too much one-on. Be careful with your structure, of course. Hey, I want to keep kids to practice some of these drills, or other kids can clean up. Hey, pick up who's in charge of the change room. Okay. So we have just behavioural things, which, once kids get past, they say 10 to 13, once they're through into high school, the parental influence, can go from 80-20 to 20-80. It can, teenagers are heavily influenced by their peers, but as a coach, you too can have a great influence. So, that's the presence thing, without trying to be over theoretical about it. It's just some of the stuff we've taught. You're going to have to practice being a little more. You might have a soft voice. I don't have a super loud voice. I usually use a megaphone. I might mumble a bit, or it's a bit monotone. I did a webinar the other day. Yeah, when I was telling you, my wife gave me a little bit of. She said, you have to work on your delivery. So here we are. But the presence is good.
It's interesting because I think what you point out here is, and since the first conversation, which is a while ago when we first discussed this one, I've come in contact with a couple of other inventories or scales that look at this, and I think what you point out is an interesting aspect of, it's not only what we send out in terms of expression, in terms of connection with others, but what comes back. And I think that certainly speaks to this more recent index, the Leadership Presence Practice Index. Again, very wordy, but how do you know they're actually, it's the top one there, the high impact communications. So it's not only what we send out, even if you mumble, but they make a change. Was the point to mumble, or was the point to facilitate the change? I think that's an interesting evolution of even this concept of presence, because it's well documented. This is really complicated. This is not something you just sort of look at behavior and say, hey, that's presence. But in terms of their response to your communications, I think is an interesting point that you raise there.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at this index again. High impact communicate. You might be a softer voice, but that can be good. You'll have to draw people in. What did he say in the classroom even? You start talking, there's a bit of noise and people, I can't hear. So you might just talk softly, deliberately to, say, I can't repeat myself on that. So you have to have a bit of, the audience has to show a little bit of, people in the audience will say, look, I can't hear, and they can be directed a little more from their end. But everyone's interested in high impact communicating. Okay, we'd all like to have a great impact. Reality is that in a 2-hour practice, you need to get the message across in a variety of ways. A high impact in communicate, it's like a high performance manager. It infers through a title, through a word, that you're somehow better than just a normal communicator. So it's a two-way street. You're not there to sheriff people all the time. There's positive reinforcement, there's instructional components, there's stop and demonstration, and you have to be able to demonstrate or have someone that can. So bringing in people who have played the game before, that can be great as well. They won't have all the theories and that, but they certainly will have a feel for the game, and they can demonstrate well, and they pick the coaching up as they get more comfortable in the environment. So the environment's important. You've got a lot of people and there's a lot going on, so and that's number 2, decisive problem solving. Decisive. Again, they think this is a person up there. It's a questioning world. Everyone wants to know why. So I don't know about, okay, problem solving would have done it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Good communication, effective communication would have done it for me. You know, athlete care and attention is in there. You know, and I think you can display composure, but the environment we're in, and this may well be a business thing, but the environment we're in, we need to be composed, then animated, then frustrated, and then, you know, okay, you know. So they need to see you're a little exasperated if sometimes their behaviour is a little erratic. I don't know, when we coach football on a windy day, it seemed to be that kids were a lot more out there. Managing core values, you know, again, kids don't want to hear a speech on core values, and they don't want to hear that. They come to play sport. But just through action, hey, pick the witches' hats up, hey, clean up. We've got 2 minutes left to practice, guys. Okay, we do these little sprints, you know, have little routines and competitions which are fun, and we'll go the furthest or the quickest or the slowest, or who gets a head start. There's a handicap race, whatever. So coaching, you might know the game, but you've got to run a practice, and you've got to be having, over time, a good influence on the kids. Managing core values, you know, well, you know, running an engaging practice would do.
Yep.
You know, and you can see that, okay, fellas, go, we'll meet next Tuesday. Remember, be good to your parents. Thank you to your mothers. You got that? Right. You can deliver some, you know, some little thing. But, you know, you think the kids are having a little bit, you know, they hear it, and, you know, who are the good people in our lives, you know? Okay, your mum might be impressed with that, right? So you're softly, you know, just inserting yourself there, reinforcing things that parents would love to be reinforced. Some might not get the chance. Your parents are shift working. And again, the home life is a big influencer of the kid that you get to coach. Delivering desired outcomes and results. Well, you know, KPIs, and you know, again, these are business things, and you might know from day one, wow, there's no one here that can run 8 seconds for 40 meters. You know, so I'm not sending them to the combine. So you might say, well, I've got an unathletic group. They seem like nice kids. We're going to have to get a little bit of fitness, so relays and little witches' hats and back and forth. Break it up, have a lot of variety where, you know, unintentionally they're getting a little bit fitter, you know. Okay, let's keep walking. You're puffing, but hey, okay, single file, back to front. Run backwards, sideways, cross, where's the ball? So, you know, these things are quite theoretical when you have to come into the practical. Displaying self-knowledge and awareness. Again, kids aren't interested in that, but parents will be. They'll say, wow, this guy's really organised. And that's what people want today. I don't know if they think you're, but, you know, that seems to get you a lot more points than anything, being organised. I would have failed miserably, because you can easily go off on tangents here. Hey, the practice was supposed to finish at half an hour. Oh, I just got carried away. So there needs to be routines and that sort of thing. And self-knowledge, self-awareness is something Cam and I have talked a lot about over the years. Yeah, your language is important. You know, there's certain things, you know, certain language which was, you know, put you out there, if you know what I mean. You've got to be careful. I think you all understand that these days. But being animated, great. Being enthusiastic, fantastic. See, it doesn't say anything about those things. It calls them assertive. You've got to be assertive within the coaching environment where we're coaching sport. Since the kids were 2 or 1, not even walking, they were rolling little balls around and hitting things with a stick, and then they progressed. And sport or games have always been fun. They're hardwired. 3-on-3 basketball. Okay, let's go out and play street footy, or, you know, hockey with a stick, whatever all our improvisations. So if we want to punish kids, okay, we say, okay, no more sport this weekend. All right. So I think I think, really running the practice is the absolute cut and thrust of it. All this stuff is good as a student to know and to critique, but trying to put it into a format that really narrows in, and hopefully already you'll say, well, I've got a couple of things that I can improve on. Debates, EXPI.
Yeah, I mean, this final one is yet another evolution of it. And I think just we've only got a couple more minutes left. If folks have a question, you can either type it into the chat function, or we can open up your mics. But Tim, one last question for me, just in terms of the counsel that you've had with coaches and athletes over the last month, with everything that's going on, is there a theme that sort of sticks out to you in terms of the conversations you've been having, coaching from a distance, coaching remotely? How have you been managing those that are dealing with the remoteness of this, new sort of world order that we're all dealing with right now?
It's a good question. I think that I guess I'm listening a lot, and I think throughout, because I've worked, and Cam the same, because Cam and I fellas have jumped between the club and the Olympic thing, you get a good perspective of the range of strategies that you need and that you can use in both environments. I think now you've got to be giving people perspective. Hey, there are people out of jobs. There are families that are going to be really, really struggling here. There are people who are always worse off than an elite athlete. A lot of the talk is about athlete transition into normal life. A lot of that is struggling with the question of being relevant. And we've just got to join society, and sometimes it's at a lower level than my classmates who 8 years ago started off where I am. But I've been rowing or swimming or playing football or soccer for 8 years, and I've been to the Olympics, but the world is changing, and perhaps the Olympics, is one of many things on offer for kids today. So I try and bring people back into reality and say, hey, look, this will pass, and I try and think of others that need your help rather than you being too needy yourself. And you say, hey, look, you're a strong, tough guy. You're a good, stable guy. And you can just list off their great characteristics, which is absolutely true. It's just that they choose to focus on something else. So I said, look, do your exercise. That'll help keep you a little bit, stable, and reach out to a few others. Let's have a bit of a routine and get some chores happening. Do a few things for others, because it's not far away from when you're going to be in the workforce and, having to help others. And you won't be running the company when you walk in there.
Yeah, well, that's really good advice. Tim, I always appreciate a good conversation with you, and even this one, we did a bit of rehearsal, but one last question. This comes in from one of the guys online. Can you list or maybe even rank at the top of your list of criteria when you evaluate a coach? What are some of the things that maybe you've mentioned already, or you haven't mentioned that you put on that list? And when you look at a coach in action, how do you evaluate them?
When people come into my rowing club, they could sum it up without talking to anyone because of the environment. You walk in a door, there's boats and there's gym equipment, there's rowing machines, and so we always try and keep that tidy. As the saying goes, there's no second chance for a first impression. So, I think the presence for Cam and I to the students today is it's a combination of what makes you tick. And how you deliver that. So how do I evaluate? I'll see how organised you are. I'll see how enthusiastic. I'll see your engagement and effectiveness with your audience, with the athletes. Do they understand? Were you talking way too fast? Did you deliver a seminar like this one in about 2 minutes and give far too much instruction? So all that it's a bit like the present scale. It's all just in a ball there. Yeah, organisation was good. Delivery could have been a little better. Seems keen. I thought he has a good voice. Probably spoke a little too quickly. Maybe he's a little nervous, you know. So it is that, you know, Bill, it is that visual. It is that self-awareness, how you deliver it, the pacing. So, you know, we all need practice at that. So a bit in a mirror and video and again, working in your little environment there, videoing each other, doing a little coaching, and then looking at yourself there and saying, oh my goodness, I could do a little better than that. And having someone, a speech, so no one talks about speech coaches in any of this. You know, that's having a drama teacher come in. I used to teach a little drama, but there's always drama in coaching. So, you know, I think those sorts of things, which are pretty common sense, because when the practice comes, they're not going to be interested in your degrees or your theoretical knowledge. You do have to, you know, deliver and have that goal. It's going to be a fun practice. I've got things organized. I've got the whiteboard. It's all written out. 1, 2, 3, 4. The warm-up is good to start with. Okay, around we go, do these drills. And then talk to the kids once they've got a little blood flow and there's a little more alertness. That's why I work in the mornings where rowing is early. Kids come out, there's about 8 exercises forward and back. I can shoot a few smart comments around the room just to engage people or get a smile. And, you know, we sort of roll through that with the first 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and then a bit of stretching, a few more exercises. Here's the practice.
That's great. That's great, Tim. Appreciate it. Well, I'm mindful of everyone's time. Here's just a quick review of the references there. And I think, you know, that last question there on evaluation is probably a good topic for another webinar that we'll put together. We've actually got Karen Freeman, who was formerly a dietitian with the San Diego Chargers. She's up next week, and our psychologist from Drexel is going to share some ideas for those transitioning out of being an athlete. So appreciate everyone being on. And Tim, as always, thank you very much. You've inspired me. I'm going to get this presence thing up and running. So again, I appreciate your time. And if anyone has any questions, either about what we've shared today or anything about the program, please feel free to reach out to either myself, there's my email address, or David Appleton, who's our program manager. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. So, very good.